Welcome to the CLB Forge podcast. This is the show to help equip you and your church for mission, ministry, and multiplying disciples. Here are your hosts, Pastor Mike Natal and Dr. Ryan Nilsson.
Hello and welcome to episode 44. This is another one of the Church on Track series where it's just Ryan and I. So if you were looking forward to a guest, we apologize. But we've heard that a lot of people really appreciate these Church on Track. So we're really happy that we can glean Ryan's experience and professionalism and just glowing good looks in addition to his intellect and his heart for making sure that churches are healthy, which is one of the things that I absolutely love that Ryan shares all the time, is that, you know, his main goal is just to keep churches healthy and moving forward. And so we're happy that we're coming here like a sponge and we're going to suck up some knowledge from you today, Ryan. So we're really looking forward to that. Today, we're going to continue on our Church on Track series where we look at ways you can keep your church on the right track, joining God in his mission, and how to avoid traps that can get you off track. We're in the middle of our series working through 7 common breakdown areas. And those 7 common breakdown areas, the first one is leadership. The second one, of course, as I'm sure it was everybody's favorite and they're having trouble forgetting it, is transformational spirituality, because it reminded me of a transformer. And then worship and the importance of worship, evangelism and mission. And then today we find ourselves on our 5th area, which is vision. And so there's been a lot of talk recently about vision. When we're recording this podcast, it's March. And so WandaVision has just stopped. And if you haven't watched WandaVision yet, don't worry, we won't spoil it. But as a person who grew up watching, TGIF, Thank Goodness It's Friday, sitcoms, I absolutely love what they did with WandaVision. And I don't think that this is a spoiler. Yeah. If it is, I apologize 100%, but I love how each episode went through a different decade and they picked a famous sitcom and they then did an entire episode within that sitcom. It was so unique. It was something that I had never seen the Marvel universe doing. And that's why they're just miles above everything else, because they're thinking about these things that really excite people and draw people in, which is exactly what the church needs to be doing too. And so today, as we talk about vision, I hope that we get a little bit of an idea of something that we can take away from today and share with our church, or even if you're a lay person, you could share it with your pastor or with your board as you're listening. And we really hope that this will be an encouragement for you as you begin to continually build your tool chest, as we would call it, towards healthy ministry. And so today, Ryan, you're going to take us through number 5, which is vision. So get your mind stone going and bring us through that.
All right. Thanks.
No problem.
Yeah.
So Ryan, do you want to say anything before I start asking you questions and grilling you?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
All right, sweet. So my first question for you is, can you tell us what is vision?
Yeah, so Vision is a superhero that first appears in Avengers Age of Ultron. But that's not the Vision we're talking about today. Well, that's the only one we've been talking about so far. But maybe this character makes it a little cooler and more interesting to talk about Vision. And actually, as you mentioned, that's actually one of my favorite superheroes. And
is Vision?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
it.
so. Like the synthezoid, part human, part android, part whatever. Infinity Stone. When he is first created in the movie, in Age of Ultron, one of the first things he does is as he kind of escapes and gets away from fighting with the superheroes, he flies up to a window and he stops and he looks out at the city. And he's noticing something about it that the rest of us don't notice or appreciate. And that kind of reminds me about vision. So vision is about the vision that we're talking about today is about looking ahead to the future that's not yet here, seeing something that others may not yet see, and helping them see it with us. I think they captured that kind of well in that scene in that Marvel movie. And that's what we're going to talk about today. This is a hugely important leadership role, and it's one that's often neglected and misunderstood. And we're not going to do it justice today. We will revisit. This is one of those topics we'll come back to again and again. We're just going to take a few minutes to talk about some key things about vision. So first of all, what is the vision that we're talking about, not the superhero? Vision is it answers the question, what will it look like in the future when our church is fulfilling its mission? So when you're looking out at the future that's not yet here, when you see something that the potential for something that others don't yet see in church ministry, it's if we're serious about the mission that God's given us, what could that look like if we're doing that successfly in the future?
Hey, so Ryan, often, if I could pause you and ask just a quick question. So when you're talking about mission, and I hope that as our listeners hear me ask this question, they just abruptly shout it at their listening device. But can you unpack, like, so what exactly is our mission? If we're talking about fulfilling our mission, what is that?
Yeah. So your mission is your purpose, right? And the answer is, it's the Great Commission. Jesus has given us our mission, and that is to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's our mission. And every church articulates some variation of that. When they get away from their mission, that's when they head to trouble. Sometimes churches adopt a different mission without realizing it. And that mission might be, our mission is to keep everybody happy. Our mission is to stay this size. Our mission is to have worship services in this style that we really like. Our mission might be to just have a great time with the people who are here. So it's really important to understand what your mission really isn't up to you. God has assigned it to us. Are you going to follow the one that God has given us, or are you going to drift away from it and risk making up your own? So what is it? So vision is answering that question. That's a great question, Mike. What is vision? What is mission? Vision's answering that question. Well, what does that look like for our church to be successfully making disciples, helping people grow in their relationship with God, helping people meet Christ for the first time, and doing more and more of that work? What would it look like here in our town if we're doing that successfully? And I think in the church setting, vision should require some kind of challenge that you can't do without God's help, that you can't do without depending on God. I think I've shared this before. There's some quote out there that I forget who said this now, but somebody said
it's probably Luther. Just attribute it to Luther. It'll be fine.
I don't think it was him, but okay. Mike says it's Luther. It's amazing what the Western church has accomplished without depending on the Holy Spirit. And it might be tempting to cast a vision that way. Like, what can we do independent of God? So vision shouldn't be something that's like so way far out there. Like, we're gonna preach the gospel to 2 million people this year. But it also shouldn't be something that's so accomplishable that it wouldn't put you in a dependent relationship with God.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So why does it matter? Like, why does vision matter? Like, why are we spending an entire episode talking about it?
Yeah, good question. You know, it can be so easy to skip over doing vision because it's not, you're not actually doing something, right? It feels like, well, it's not a ministry. We're not caring for someone. It's not a worship service. Let's just skip doing that. That sounds so boring. Vision is critical because it clarifies direction. It makes it clear to everybody, this is where the church is going. This is what we want to be about. Otherwise, everyone has their own idea of what the church should do and where it should go. So when you bring clarity to that, you also bring unity around your direction as a church. You help everyone pull in the same direction. Oftentimes without vision, we're all going in different directions. And we all have different agendas for the church as well. It fosters excellence. It creates an atmosphere for, we want to do things not just good enough, but we want to do things with excellence. If we're gonna successfully make it to this destination, we also want to do things well and to the best of our ability. And it encourages and energizes and empowers skilled leaders. So it's something that can draw competent, gifted leaders to your church and keep them there. One of the challenges that struggling churches have, a lot of times gifted leaders will come to the church, they'll want to engage in something meaningful, they'll get shot down. And part of it is often there's no vision. And so those skilled leaders will get frustrated and leave. So this gives you a way not only to keep them around, but to make use of their talents. God's brought them to your church for a reason. It motivates people. It encourages giving. There's a saying that money follows vision. That's what it is. People really aren't really excited about giving to the same thing we did last year, or the electric bills, or staff salary. That's just not very exciting. But if people know what you're trying to do with all those things, where our staff are leading our volunteers and we're using our facilities this way, and it's all for the purpose of, and there's your vision, transforming your community, that we want to reach 1,000 families over the next 10 years, whatever it is. People can get excited about that. And it helps people in their stewardship journey to begin. Maybe they go from never giving to beginning to give. Maybe they go from giving occasionally to giving regularly. Anyway, it aids in giving. It also creates a risk-taking atmosphere. It makes it okay to try new things and fail. And one of the challenges in an unhealthy church is it becomes very risk-averse. People don't want to risk failing. That's the worst thing. If you tried something and it didn't work, it just becomes there's like an oppressive fear of that happening. And that's just not good or healthy. We need to be able to try things, fail at them, learn from that, and try something new. It helps us prepare for an uncertain future. We don't know what's around the corner. It helps us through times like COVID, for example. And so, vision helps us navigate really difficult times, to know that things are tough now, but they're not always going to be this way. And here's where we believe God is leading us. It also tells people that who you are currently is different from who you are becoming. And that can be really important, especially if your church is just beginning a revitalization process that might take a decade, and the building is run down and the group is small and things just seem a little out of sorts and not terribly impressive. Your vision can be a powerful communication tool to guests and new attendees that says, yeah, this is who we are, but this is new as we always are going to be. God is changing us and working in us, and here's where we're headed. And it makes it okay. The things that aren't perfect or excellent, it helps people be patient with those things and tolerate them, because they know, okay, it's not always going to be like this. Things are changing. And then the last thing I would say is, why does vision matter? It's kind of the answer to the opposite. So if you don't have vision, your church will have I call it a non-vision of status quo, where it's everything is governed by keeping things the same way. Something is going to guide the direction of your church. And unfortunately, it could be that the direction becomes to have no direction.
Yeah, I would definitely resonate with that last one. As I think about vision gives you a trajectory in a specific direction, and it really curbs from feeling like what you're doing is just mundane and monotonous.
Yeah.
And I know like ministry, especially for ministry leaders, sometimes things can feel monotonous, and really what you need to ask yourself is, well, what's the vision? Because if you stay on the vision, then things are constantly being renewed and encouraged, as opposed to getting kind of off vision, just like you said in that last part, Ryan, where it's like it's a church ruled by status quo. They're just stuck in a rut of monotony, which can be just as detrimental.
Yeah.
As,
Yep.
not helping people to see, what their role is and stuff like that, not motivating individuals, all of that. This is just as dangerous. Having the same thing over and over and over again. People just kind of fall into a rut.
Yeah, absolutely. And that challenge of status quo, we're going to come back to that in our last 2 breakdown episodes as well. And it's important to preserve our theology, but it's dangerous to preserve the exact same way that we execute ministry and never change it. It really gets us off course quickly.
Yeah. So Ryan, how can we cast vision?
Yeah. So if you're a ministry leader and you're listening to this, okay, where do I even start with this? I've got some pointers to share with you, and just trying. Okay, here's another great quote. I think
another Lutheran one.
No.
Oh, okay.
G.K. Chesterton, who was a secret Lutheran.
Oh,
can we say that? Maybe. Should we?
I mean, it's in the podcast already, so
yeah.
Unless Lindsay edits it out, it's canonized.
Did Chesterton secretly want to become a Lutheran?
100%.
G.K. Chesterton, I think, is the one who said, a thing worth doing well is worth doing poorly. So
what?
A thing worth doing well is worth doing poorly. Now, I'm not saying if you can choose between doing something well and doing it terribly, do it terribly. But if something is worth doing really well, it's worth doing poorly. Like, just start doing it. Even if you can't do it perfectly, at least start doing it to the best of your ability.
I'm tracking now. Yeah. I'm tracking.
So I think that's important with vision. You're not going to be able to do this perfectly out of the gate. You got to start somewhere. So you might cast a 1-year vision plan. You may not want to start with a 10-year vision statement. Just do what you can and be able to shift and adjust it and develop it. Okay. So one of the key things is to dream about the future with elders and other lay leaders in your church. So I'm kind of talking to I'm talking as if your listeners are a pastor, but if you're a lay leader or an elder, it's important to know how you can contribute to this process. But let's say you're a pastor, okay? Engage other leaders in the church to dream about the future of the church. And I think a great setting for this is a leadership retreat. I like to take church leaders away for several hours. I like to get them away from the building, the church facility, to go somewhere else and kind of get them out of their normal setting where normal meetings happen, get them away from distractions. So the trustee chairman isn't sitting there thinking, boy, this room needs to get painted, or the Sunday school team leader isn't sitting thinking, oh, that teacher didn't clean up that table. I need to get that cleaned up. So everyone can focus on this task and be in a setting where they're not going to be interrupted for a few hours. I'd consider having a facilitator there. So if you're a leader, you can do it, but then it's hard for you to participate and facilitate. So consider bringing an outsider that has gifts in this area to facilitate your conversation. And then what I like to do in those retreat settings is kind of 3 main activities. Reflect on the past year. What has God made it possible for us to accomplish? What are some of the things that we tried to do but didn't work out? Because we want to celebrate risk-taking. What can we learn? What did we learn? What blessings did we see from God over this past year? And that becomes such an encouraging and emboldening conversation. Then the second thing that I like to do is have leaders dream about the future. After we've looked back at the past year, let's say, to think about the future. And here are some great questions that these kinds of questions can really spur conversation. What kind of church do we want to be? What do we want our church to look like in 5 or 10 years? Where do we think that God is leading us? What new things do we want to try as a church? And sometimes it can help to ask questions in a specific area, like what do we want our ministry to our community to look like in 10 years? What do we want our ministry to families to be like in 5 years? And to start working on that dream, that helps people dream and think about the future. And that can help you start articulating a vision statement, which is that guiding, direction setting, communication tool that's important for your church. And as you start to craft that out, like, you want to ask, does it create a picture of what our church will look like in a few years? Does it clarify the direction we need to move in? Does it inspire people? You want to be able to ask those kinds of questions. It needs to be somewhat specific and measurable as well. And then from there, you can develop plans. How are we going to execute our mission? Your plan is how you execute your mission so that you can get to that place that you have cast vision for. So as you're doing that, be ready to involve others. Get ideas. When you get dreams from people, kind of word them and shape them into vision. But then don't stop there. Get feedback again, and discuss it, and refine it, and go back and forth. So whatever you do at that leadership retreat probably takes some more time to keep working on and developing and refining. So it's important that you get input from others. But if you're the pastor or the key ministry leader that's leading this process, be ready to be the primary shaper and catalyst and refiner and communicator of the vision. That's a task that often needs to fall to the pastor. Depending on your leadership skills, if you're a pastor, I may need to say to you, beware of the trap of relying too much on other people and abdicating your leadership role. So the church needs you to exercise leadership. So some of us may have a tendency to not use our leadership voice and expect others in the church to do that. You're in the best seat to lead this process. You're there every day. You know the most people in the church. It's really you live this, and you eat, breathe, drink, and sleep it. Is that the saying? That's not this. I messed up. I mean, I'm just like butchering metaphors.
I think
everywhere.
Luther said that though too. Drink, sleep, law, gospel.
So one trap is to rely too much on others and not play a leadership role. Another trap, though, is to not listen enough to others. That's another way we fail to lead. Like, you're just going to go ahead and do it and not pay attention to the feedback or the questions that come up, or not let others contribute. You don't want to risk that either. And I also think another huge challenge in a congregational church is beware the trap of leading by survey. So oftentimes when you think about the future, oftentimes churches will say, the leaders will gather and say, well, where should we go? And then someone will say, well, we're a congregational church, so let's survey the congregation. And that's just not fair to your membership. You can engage them and look for feedback, but if you just say, let's vote on what we want to do in the future, it's another way you're abdicating your leadership. Your congregation's called you to lead them, and you've spent the time thinking about this and studying it and preparing, and then you put that decision off onto somebody who may not have done those things or who's expecting you to do that. You'll get an answer, but it may not be helpful to you. Mm. So, last thing I want to say too, as you begin to work on that, I would just Google church vision statements, and you'll start finding all kinds of examples. Okay, if there's a healthy, growing church in your community, you could probably go on their website and find their vision statement. It will say, some churches they confuse mission and vision, or they use the terms interchangeably. So often a short 4 to 10 word statement, I would call that a mission statement. And then a vision statement can be sometimes a longer 1 or more paragraphs describing what their church will be like. So like welcoming a certain number of members into our church, how you want to engage in discipleship, how many churches you want to plant over the next couple of decades, if there's something about your facilities that you want to change or grow or expand, that you make a statement about those kinds of things. So it might be reorganizing the way your church functions together, which we'll get into in our next breakdown episode. So being specific helps people see where you're going. So that's what we got. I do have a couple books to suggest too, and then I don't know if Mike, if you have any wrap up comments after that, but a couple books. So one book I really like is called Advanced Strategic Planning by Aubrey Malphurs, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's just an excellent book about leading your church through a discovery and planning process, and part of that is about how to develop a vision. And then another book that I really love, a leadership book, is called Canoeing the Mountains. And it just talks about how you lead your church to discover, a vision for the future and how to carry that out. And especially where this book, Canoeing the Mountains, is really geared for a time when kind of the maps of ministry no longer work. And where do you go? You kind of have to navigate new territory together. That's where we've been the last few decades in general in the Western church, but especially now in COVID. Things change so rapidly. It's important to learn how to go on that kind of a discovery process together with your leadership team.
Yeah, Ryan, this was exactly what I needed to hear after the conversation that you and I had right before we started recording. This
cool.
is literally what I needed to hear and
Wow.
exactly the way I needed to hear it. And I'm sure that there are others who are out there saying, yeah, this definitely resonates. I know, especially for us, I love to take the easy way out and like blame COVID and say, the reason why we're going in this direction is because of COVID, or the reason why things are a little bit more difficult now are because of COVID, when in fact, I think that maybe it's that COVID gave us the not excuse, but like hampered our vision statement. And if we weren't staying on course with that, it's easy to get wrapped up in the monotony of, well, here's what we need to do because we're following this and we're doing this and we're doing this. And it can get very sloggy.
Yeah. I think,
I
think COVID, it has made a lot of churches, like a good thing about COVID is it's made churches stop and say, okay, we can't do everything. What's really important? What are we really supposed to be about? And that's a vision question.
Yeah.
I think
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I think God redeems, tragic times like this with moments like we're talking about to really pause and review how we're doing as a church family.
Yeah, 100%. I think we also, as church leaders, sit in a very interesting period right now because we have the opportunity to vision cast now as we are starting to come out the other side of COVID.
Yeah.
And so like right now it's March for us. This is going to release a little bit later than that, but now is the perfect time as you're listening to this to gather your leadership team together and start casting vision. Don't wait until, COVID things have opened up or people are looking for more stuff to do and get more involved. Start planning now so that when things open up, you're already prepared. Like here, I kind of want to gush really quick. We can edit this out if we have to, Lindsay. Go ahead and edit this out. But like we had a mission committee meeting for the first time in probably 6 months last week. And it was great to get other people's opinions on the vision and direction that we see the church going now post COVID. And one of the cool things that we're going to start implementing is we're going to do like a book drive where we're going to give books to local daycares and nurseries so that they can give those out to kids. Because we've noticed that, a lot of times during COVID, people can find food, people can find certain resources, but one of the things that seems to be lacking is books.
Wow.
And so we're going to start a book drive at the church. And then one of the other things too is we had one person, and I don't know why I didn't think of this, but like we had one person literally go, this summer, why don't we gather outside? Like go to a park or just tell people, hey, we're going to go here and we're going to do a scavenger hunt in nature. And I was like, that's so cool. Cause we talk about being a church that wants to get out into the community, and COVID is the perfect excuse to have to not gather indoors and to go out and to meet people where they're at. Yeah. And so I was just encouraged how our team was kind of vision casting into that and to say, awesome. that the same can be done for your church as well, and we're looking forward to that. Any other comments, Ryan?
Yeah, your story just reminds me of a time that can be seem really, really challenging and just difficult. It can be such a great opportunity for new ministry. And your story made me think about a pastor I was talking to who's, if they do this, we'll have him on as a guest. But
nice.
They just like their normal summer programming. They can't do it. They can't do their big summer vacation Bible school program with hundreds of kids. And so he started to cast vision to his leaders. What if we hire 3 part-time college students? And instead of like bringing hundreds of kids together, we do small day camps. Like every week, nice. All summer long, we have a day camp for 25 kids. I mean, the kinds of connections they could build doing something like that. I thought it was so creative, so resourceful and innovative, and just a great example of a pastor casting vision for a church.
Nice.
So,
love it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your story, Mike. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, Ryan, thank you for sharing your vision casting for people giving vision.
Thanks,
it's
man.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that it's greatly appreciated. And for me personally, it was just great to hear it. It's exactly what I needed to hear at this exact time. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Just a statement I read just yesterday or this morning. You're more likely to lead people by inspiring them than controlling them. And I think we forget that. So vision's a way we inspire people.
Thank you to all of our listeners, too, for tuning in to our show today. Don't forget to subscribe to our show so that you can get notifications when a new podcast drops. And we're usually dropping them on Tuesdays. But who knows? We might sprinkle in a few extras here and there. And we'd love it if you could share the podcast with a friend or a colleague. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
This has been an episode of the CLB Forge podcast with Pastor Mike Natal and Dr. Ryan Nilsson. Thanks for listening. We welcome your questions and comments. Email us at podcast@clbforge.org.